Trevor Thiessen, and I'm going to be looking at Psalm 119 today, part of our continuation on that chapter. And on Friday, Brian gave a great overview of the whole book. And if I'd encourage you to take a look at that to get some other context if you haven't listened to it already. I'm going to be looking at verses 33 to 48 today. Let me start by just reading that first section of the passage. It says, "Teach me your decrees, O Lord, and I will keep them to the end. Give me an understanding, and I will obey your instructions. I will put them into practice with all my heart. Make me walk along the path of your commands, for that is where my happiness is found. Give me an eagerness for your laws, rather than a love for money. Turn my eyes from worthless things, and give me life through your word. Reassure me of your promises made to those who fear you. Help me abandon my shameful ways, for your regulations are good. I long to obey your commands. Renew my life with your goodness." In the Message, there's a passage in there that really struck me when I was reading this at a different time. And the verse says, "Give me a bent for your words of wisdom and not for piling up loot. Divert my eyes from toys and trinkets and invigorate me on the pilgrim way." I thought about that a lot, and I don't know why that verse was kind of the main verse that stuck in my head. But, as I was focusing on this and meditating on it, I find that a lot of times I get complacent in my life. And, when things are stressful or things get a little bit mixed up, as we've been experiencing here with COVID over the last 6 months, I find myself looking at the things of the world, filling that void with trinkets, toys, as opposed to the things that God might want me to fill them with. And I was struck by the passion that the author of Psalm 119 had for God's word and God's commandments. And at first I was like, I kind of dismissed it. But the more I read it and the more I studied in preparation for this, I was just struck by, no, there is this sense of peace, this sense of calm that fills that void that we try to fill so many times with things of the world, that if we just took the time to read God's word, if we took the time to listen to his commands, to his encouragements, to his promises, that void would be filled with things of godly nature, not worldly nature, things that are eternal, not things that are temporal. And, for myself, instead of chasing that next shiny object that I think is going to make me feel good or that I think is going to make my family happier, I should just chase more time with God. I should take that time and that energy and focus it on him. The second part of that passage goes like this: "Lord, give me your unfailing love, the salvation that you promised me. Then I can answer those who taunt me, for I trust in your word. Do not snatch your word of truth from me, for your regulations are my only hope. I will keep on obeying your instructions forever and ever. I will walk in freedom, for I have devoted myself to your commands, and I will speak to kings about your laws, and I will not be ashamed. How I delight in your commands, how I love them. I honor and love your commands. I meditate on your decrees." Again, this love, this passion for God's word continues to shine through in those verses. But the part that really struck me was the boldness that can come from following these commands, from being committed to them. God's word gives us a strength that we can't even imagine, a boldness, as the author says, to speak to kings, a boldness to ignore the taunts and the torments that the world kind of throws at us, or the stress that the world comes with. And these are things that I'm just impressed with, that, if we follow God's commands, if we follow God's decrees and passionately and intentionally commit them to our heart, to our mind, we won't be struck in this fear of being bold on his behalf, or just being bold with our life. And, I think I fall into this trap. I'm guilty of, doing my daily devotions to check the box, not to dive into this love affair with God's commands. And I've fallen into this routine of doing devotions on my way to work and listening to this podcast, which is great. But oftentimes I don't go deep enough. And so I'd encourage you during this time, especially in the last month of summer here, take some time to be reflective on how deep you want to go with God's commands. Thank you, and have a fantastic day.